Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Moving Offline. Today we have Adam Yasmin, and he's going to talk about slow tech and what it feels to live with our devices today. He has a podcast, the Slow Tech Podcast, which will be linked below. We'll be having a conversation about what is slow tech, why was he so interested in this concept, and what is he doing to create awareness out there in the world. Welcome, Adam, to the podcast, and tell us a little bit more about your background and why did you start this project?
It's great to be here, Jose. Thank you so much. I just would like to say that I'm here because I recently got in touch with the folks over at Dumb Wireless, and I saw your book was for available for purchase through their website. I had never heard of you until that moment, and when I looked into the work that you're doing, I hadn't actually I got a physical copy of your book yet, but I immediately, upon looking at your Substack, upon looking at just the nature of your book and listening to some of your episodes here, Moving Offline, I immediately felt like, okay, a conversation needs to happen sooner than later. And so I'm really, 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 really stoked to be here. I have been developing this felt sense of slow tech. It sounds like an awkward phrase to say, when you think of, I don't know how old you are. I'm 40, turning 41 this fall. I kind of came from, I guess I'm in this elder millennial kind of category where we were probably the last group of people who at least made it to adolescence without any devices whatsoever. And so when I say the word slow tech, I almost kind of doubt myself and thinking, are people going to think that slow tech is about being anti-tech, is about deliberately choosing much slower or clunkier devices, like thinking of dial-up modems or desktop computers that are like slow, have, like low amounts of RAM and whatnot. Has nothing to do with that. Slow tech has to do with really exploring at its most nuanced levels our relationship that we're in with our devices, especially people who own smartphones, of which there are many, many of us across the planet. I was looking for some recent numbers once we crossed into 2024. I think the latest numbers I saw were that there are roughly 6.94 billion smartphones on planet Earth. There are around 8.5 billion people, 8.5 billion human beings on planet Earth. That's a pretty significant proportion of the global population. And so in this quest for, again, having this felt sense of what does it mean to be in a relationship to our devices? Do we even acknowledge that we're in a relationship to these devices? What is the day-to-day like when we come across these concepts of minimalism and less is more and screen-free breaks or digital detoxes or all these kinds of like more sort of curious and popularized terms in recent years. It's slow tech that I've been developing, one as a newsletter, as a podcast, as a conversation series, really in hopes as a community to have these really basic but like nuanced and sort of complex conversations, really discussing what is it like for you, what is it like for me, and how are there ways in which we can learn from each other based on like certain habits. And so one of the main ways I do this is now through the podcast. I just launched it in recent weeks. Actually, my first interview episode is releasing today. I was able to interview Joe Hollier, co-founder of Lightphone. And so we talked about Lightphone 3, amongst other things. So that is being released today in exactly an hour at 11:11 a.m. Pacific time. I also, since last October, I joined a mental health app based out of South Africa called October Health. And in October Health, I host these sessions that are conversational and educational and somewhat in the realm of group coaching, specifically around digital habits, mostly for like parenting with screens and how we can improve upon our habits based on exploring this relationship that we're in with our devices. So I do that 2 to 3 times per week. I also am a student of Chinese tea culture, and I've been so for 15 years. And one of my main offerings is slow tea. As you can see, that there's a link here, slow tea and slow tech. Again, taking a methodical and slow approach, taking what I've been so impacted by in my studies of Chinese tea culture, bringing that to teams, organizations, team building experiences, workplace wellness. Yeah, without going too far into the outskirts, that's kind of the gist of what I'm doing and why I'm approaching slow tech.
So it sounds like in your background, one area that I continue to hear is just that you are maybe as a person, and you want, of course, as a community, to be a reaction to the go, go, go mentality, hustle culture, and ideas that we have adopted in our lifestyle in the West and also in the East. Like, this is a global phenomenon nowadays that people want success right away. They want to build something really quickly and be able to have everything at their fingertips and all of the information. And it just seems like a deluge of just constant connectivity that it doesn't even allow us to, as you said, acknowledge that we have a relationship with these items, that we have a relationship with technology, that we need to have relationships not only with technology, but also with human beings. And it seems to me that you're trying to find connectors, whether it is through slow tech or slow tea, right? Like, all of these things are, what can I use all of these ideas and maybe concepts in order to create a more human connection with my environment, with the people around me, et cetera, et cetera. So was there something that prompted you to do this? Usually people either have a breakdown, or was this just kind of like something that you realized slowly? What is it, your personal relationship to this new reality of slow tech, slow tea, just like slow life, that allows you to savor a little bit more of what you actually want in your life and to reject those things that are just thrusted at us by culture?
It's a great question, Jose. To be a little bit transparent, with your audience, with your community, my background before coming into the digital well-being space was being in UX. I transitioned into UX when my partner and I found out we were going to become parents for the first time. Our daughter is now turning 9 next week. So before getting into UX, I was into tea. I was also a visual artist and like working musician. So kind of stringing odd jobs together as someone who was raised in what I would describe a rather chaotic family upbringing. I think living through childhood and adolescence through these like chapters of chaos, instability, dysfunction, I guess I would describe myself as someone with what we call a high ACE score. ACE is an acronym for adverse childhood experiences. And there was a lot of like go, 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 running, jumping from one chaotic life event to the next. So I think once I got to my adulthood, especially when I became a parent, when I transitioned into design and tech kind of simultaneous at the same time, I recognized that tech was a really fast-paced environment. The culture surrounding tech, whether it's enterprise level stuff or startup, bootstrapping everything, just kind of going at breakneck speed. I noticed these things immediately because one of the ways I was able to adapt to my, to these situations, these challenging situations growing up, was to be able to observe, to adapt, to bend towards the flow of things. So again, coming into adulthood, coming into this career choice, coming into UX during essentially their gold rush moment about 10 years ago, I was freelancing with a baby at home. I was looking for today what we would call, a remote role, which back then was almost unheard of completely. You were expected to, and we live in Los Angeles. LA is known for its epic commutes. I was facing the prospect of not seeing my baby daughter for upwards of 12 hours a day. Why? To defer my life and my enjoyment as a parent, as a man, as a human being, to some projected future which doesn't exist. This retirement age or whatever. We're going to work really hard so that we can enjoy later. And I was never sold on that idea. And for better and for worse, I also was like not really an academic student. Coming out of like high school, I was struggling with pursuing a higher education degree, so I left that route to be a working musician. All of which to say that in my highly sensitive constitution as a human being, in my role as a parent, as someone who, again, I have a particular relationship to slow moving things, to tea in particular, to methodical process, to being able to absorb stress and challenge through somatic based experiences, really checking, having like an emotional well-being check-in, things that I've learned over the course of my life through mentorship, through workshops, through apprenticeship, through partnership. And yeah, forgive me for kind of going into all these, similar but like related realms to this question. But I find that it's really just based on my experiences, and it's always through hardship and through stress that I really wanted to double down, triple down on this like slow and relaxed approach. Because frankly, for all of the startups that I would contract with as a UXer many years ago, I would approach them 2 weeks after the contract was done, and I would say, guys, I think it's time that you try something like this. I've been quiet about this, but now that the contract's done, I like to offer this. Imagine it's like a mindfulness module. It's tea. We could do this like in-office retreat. It'll be really nice. You can actually like put your phones on airplane mode for 45 minutes. This is an innately human experience, right? We didn't evolve to go and hustle like indefinitely. It's not what's in our DNA, frankly, to be kind of simple and rather obtuse about it. But to be able to connect with one another over these shared experiences that we were lacking severely, just a couple of years ago through the onset of the pandemic, through different stages of lockdown. So this is why I've come to this. I hope I've answered that question.
So something that I heard throughout your response was this reality that as human beings, we tend to appreciate the things that are slow, but our culture seems to be on this race to finish first and finish with the most amount of money and retire early. There's different communities that have sprung around that. And the goals are not inherently wrong, wanting to be accomplished with a project or try to seek financial independence, right? And be able to not have to rely on a job for the rest of your life for whatever reason, let it be you have a child or you want to enjoy more of life, et cetera, et cetera. But it seems to me that the idea of slow tech, or the process that you're trying to invite, is to recommunicate our priorities and to do so in a way that makes us human again, that makes us enjoy our common humanity with each other through a process of doing something. Like, for example, you said that you like tea. So making tea is an involved process, and you can do it pretty quickly by warming up to the highest volume of heatness on your stove, right? Or you can go up to the medium, and it's going to take a little bit longer, but maybe it's going to be a more enjoyable experience. Can you talk to me about your experiences with technology companies, and humans, that you've been able to see how slow is a better approach than the fast that we're so used to?
Great question. One of the reasons why I got into UX when I did was because I saw it as a thoughtful, empathetic, and engaging methodical process. It's almost like taking the scientific method and applying it towards design principles. And what I found in the real, like, for instance, I'd gone to the General Assembly factory. That's what I came out of. General Assembly is like a global community of these, what started out as co-working spaces that then turn into the tech education hubs where they crank out UX designers, web devs, digital marketers, etc. It was a great program. It was like a 12-week full-time immersion with the prospect of rolling out into some defined role, albeit a junior role. We made a lot of promises. These are promises that don't really deliver based on a shifting market, but that's a separate conversation. Again, I was attracted to UX because I saw it as a chance to be empathetic both to shareholders and to users or human beings. That there are bridges that connect those two important people in this mix. What I found out in the real world was that the role of the UX designer was rather kind of shoehorned into a random stage of a project based on budget concerns and timing and stages, different waterfall or agile stages. There wasn't really honoring the process of UX, depending on the size of the operation, right? The budget, the time allotted. So unless you're working for a much bigger enterprise level organization where they bake design into their process, whether it's for hardware or for software, I found myself in a pinball machine, so to speak, in freelance life for about 5 years. Again, chasing this dwindling carrot, so to speak, living this kind of freelance lifestyle. And it was really once the pandemic began that all these local agencies, closed their offices. They stopped hiring local designers and turned to Upwork and Fiverr. So it became an employer's marketplace really quickly. And then as a freelance designer, you're competing with a global talent pool of absolutely amazing, talented people who live in different locations in the world with different overhead. And so, that was the end of that sort of nascent career. So that's another reason why so beyond my upbringing of, chaotic experiences and wanting to opt for slowness and care and consideration, I also came to that through, my sort of short-lived career as a UXer. But I was driven coming out of that career and, across the pandemic and even now today to humanize fellow technologists. That is one of my goals, if you will. They need to slow down too. So do parents. Everyone needs to slow down. We can't really afford to because we need to, we have a lot of upkeep to do. And it's not about slowing down just for slowing down's sake. It's not just another metric or goal to reach. It's really about embedding a certain kind of perspective or lifestyle. Again, it's what I find fascinating and enriching about digital minimalism and minimalism in general, and kind of appreciating certain Eastern philosophies from my Western lens and seeing the beauty in those philosophies and learning from them so that I can have a day-to-day experience that feels more balanced and able to adapt to, again, the insanity of this so-called modern life.
It sounds like you have not only, you started in like a creative role, but then you moved into the digital area, and then it kind of backfired with the reality that the digital only cares about optimizing and decreasing cost, even at the expense of having less quality or having less human interaction, et cetera, et cetera. But something that I want to kind of explore as we get into the final part of this podcast is, what is it that you're hoping to accomplish with your podcast, your advocacy? Where are you moving personally and professionally towards this slow movement that can help people regain some of that human interaction once again?
This is the hardest answer to give you right now. In truth, and it's scary to say, I don't really know. It's both exciting and terrifying at the same time. On the one hand, my goal remains of humanizing technologists through workplace well-being initiatives and facilitation through the vehicle of tea. I started Slow Tech Podcast to meet people like you, to meet like-minded individuals, people who are out there in the field doing amazing work, heroes out in the field that I'd love to interact with, maybe through this medium, and to build a community through, again, to attempt to build a community through Substack of people who would like to receive a conversation or a tidbit or maybe some kind of guided meditation through the app, through the podcast, on a weekly basis. And also to be a proactive parent. I have a daughter who's turning 10 next year, who's quickly going into her adolescence. I want to continue being present in this field as it's shifting, as it's changing really quickly. There's so much going on. There's a lot to be said about, child safety, child internet safety. And there's that entire realm there that I feel like I'm just constantly absorbing that information. So it's still both a personal journey of continued learning, but also to offer what I have, what I've developed for myself to other people through these particular channels and mediums.
That sounds like a lofty goal, and at the same time, something extremely approachable that anyone can do. Like, we can offer ourselves and disconnect from the thrust that is the internet and, kind of just go back to a more serene path, something that can be accomplished by adopting slower forms of tech, but also, other practices that may be able to complement in there. Adam, I really hope that your project continues to go well and that you find a lot of other like-minded people like myself or the folks at Dumb Wireless, that you met. And I believe you have an event coming up. As we wrap up, I always like to leave the guests with the final word. And I'd like you to tell us more about what's coming up in your life and the podcast on the tea realities, and anything else you'd like to say.
Yes, I've just recently launched Slow Tech Podcast. It's hosted on Substack. If you subscribe today, you'll be getting the newest episode, which is my debut conversation with Joe Hollier of Lightphone. If you were in the Los Angeles area, perchance in the next 24 hours, I'm going to be hosting a slow tea event at Plant Material, which is an amazing plant nursery in Silver Lake. Again, you can find that information on slowtechpod.substack.com. You can also get in touch on Instagram at slowtechpodcast, and also join October Health for daily conversations and education around improving our relationship with our devices.
That was Adam Yasmin from the Slow Tech Podcast. He is someone who is truly interested in getting to know more people that are like-minded and spreading the message of slow tech out there. I know this is a second podcast this week, and I don't usually release a lot of them, but I try to do them as soon as possible, as soon as I record them, because I want you guys to bask in the conversations and to have the opportunity to digest them. At the same time, there are a couple of other podcasts that are coming up, probably one next week as well. So I apologize for the super quick release, but I hope that you find the conversations truly engaging and that you get to live a better life because of them. Thank you for listening to Moving Offline. We'll see you next time.